The year is 1966. The place is Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a small, unassuming town nestled on the banks of the Ohio River. It was a place defined by its past, by the whispers of the Civil War and the ghosts of forgotten battles. But on the surface, it was a typical American town of the era, quiet, peaceful, with a close-knit community and a sense of isolation from the rest of the world. Life moved at a slower pace here, punctuated by the rhythmic chugging of passing trains and the distant sound of the industrial plant, a sprawling complex that once produced explosives for the war. This was the TNT area, a large, abandoned government facility just outside of town. Its concrete domes, subterranean tunnels, and overgrown bunkers stood as silent, eerie monuments to a bygone era. No one knew it then, but this quiet, sleepy town was about to become the epicenter of one of the most terrifying and enduring paranormal mysteries in American history. A shadow was about to fall over Point Pleasant, and it would change the lives of its residents forever. This was not a place where strange things were supposed to happen. Its residents were honest, hard-working people who believed in common sense, not in ghouls or monsters. But Point Pleasant had a history older than the town itself. It was the site of a brutal, decisive battle during the American Revolution, and local folklore spoke of ancient curses and restless spirits. Yet these were just stories, tales told around campfires. No one took them seriously. The town was firmly planted in the modern world, a place of factories, families, and high school football games. The idea that something ancient, something unspeakable was about to emerge from the darkness was simply unthinkable. However, a subtle strangeness had begun to permeate the region even before the main events began. People reported seeing odd blinking lights in the sky. Others spoke of strange sounds emanating from the abandoned TNT area. There were even rumors of mysterious men in black suits appearing in the area, asking residents unsettling questions before vanishing without a trace. These were isolated incidents, dismissed as local gossip and overactive imaginations. But in hindsight, they were the first tremors of an approaching quake, a series of bizarre and unexplainable events that were setting the stage for something much bigger. The town's collective unconscious was being prepared, slowly and methodically, for the arrival of the inexplicable. The first official sighting took place on November 15, 1966. A young couple, Roger and Linda Scarberry, were driving with their friends, Steve and Mary Millette, near the old TNT area. Their drive was a routine one, a quiet night out, but as they passed by the abandoned power plant, they saw something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Standing on a hill, its massive wings folded behind it, was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was enormous, roughly 7 feet tall with a powerful, muscular build. Its skin was gray or brownish, but the most terrifying feature was its eyes. They were not just bright, they were huge, glowing circles of an intense, burning red fixated on the car. The sight sent a bolt of pure, unadulterated terror through the group. The creature's eyes were not simply reflecting the car's headlights. They seemed to possess an inner light, a fiery, almost malevolent glow. Roger, who was driving, slammed on the gas. He sped away, but the creature unfolded its wings and launched itself into the air. It flew with an unnatural, almost mechanical grace, its massive wings never seeming to flap. The creature pursued their car at a terrifying speed, easily keeping up with the vehicle even as Roger pushed it to over 100 miles per hour. The chase went on for several miles before the creature veered away and disappeared. When the couples finally arrived at the local sheriff's office, they were frantic and in shock. They could barely form coherent sentences, but their story was consistent and terrifying. The sheriff, George Johnson, at first believed it was a prank, but as he looked at the sheer terror in their eyes, he knew their story was genuine. The very next day, a local man named Newell Partridge came forward. He reported that he had been in a field near his home just a few hours before the Scarberry sighting. He had aimed his flashlight at a strange figure. The light caught its eyes, two large, glowing circles of red. It was a similar description to the one the Skyberries gave, but Partridge's encounter was more chilling. He had tried to get closer, but the creature had let out a piercing, high-pitched shriek before retreating into the trees. Partridge's dog, a brave German shepherd, chased after it, but never returned. Later that evening, another couple, Marcella and Arthur Bennett, were driving near the TNT area when they saw a winged figure glide over their car. They described it as a headless creature with glowing red eyes. The sightings were no longer isolated incidents. They were multiplying, and they were all pointing to the same conclusion. Something was out there.
Part 3. The spread of the phenomenon. The sightings continued throughout the winter of 1966. Point Pleasant was on edge. A local man named Richard E. Bird, Jr. was driving alone when he saw the creature land on a patch of grass. He described it as a large, dark figure with wings, and he was able to see it at close range. He was so terrified that he drove home as fast as he could and locked all his doors. Students, police officers, and town residents all came forward with similar accounts. The creature, which the media quickly dubbed the Mothman, was now a household name in the region. The description was always consistent: a giant winged humanoid, often with glowing red eyes that moved with unnatural speed and made an eerie, unidentifiable screeching sound. The media coverage was relentless. Newspapers from New York to California ran stories on the winged monster of West Virginia. Point Pleasant was no longer a quiet, isolated town. It was a tourist destination for UFO enthusiasts and cryptid hunters. Among those who arrived was a journalist and ufologist named John A. Keel. Initially, Keel was a skeptic, but he became deeply involved in the case. He began to notice a pattern. The sightings were not just of the Mothman, they were accompanied by a bizarre array of other phenomena: strange lights in the sky, unexplained noises, electrical disturbances, and even poltergeist activity in people's homes. Keel began to believe that the Mothman was not a single creature, but a manifestation of a much larger, more complex paranormal event. He theorized that the creature, along with the other phenomena, was a sign of something much bigger. Adding to the growing paranoia was the presence of mysterious men in black suits. These were not government officials or police officers. They were quiet, unsmiling men who drove black cars. They appeared in town, knocked on doors, and asked witnesses unsettling questions about their sightings. Witnesses reported that these men seemed to know intimate details about their lives, things they had not shared with anyone. Their presence was deeply intimidating, and many witnesses were so frightened that they stopped talking about their experiences publicly. The Men in Black, as they came to be known, seemed to be part of a larger, coordinated effort to silence witnesses and cover up the truth. Their motives were never clear, but their actions contributed to the growing sense of unease and distrust in the town. The psychological toll on the town was immense. Residents were afraid to leave their homes after dark. The sightings created a palpable sense of unease and fear. Many believed the creature was a harbinger of doom, an omen of a coming disaster. They believed it was a messenger sent to warn them of a terrible event. The fear was so widespread that the local authorities began to receive calls from people who were afraid to sleep. The sightings were no longer just a curiosity. They were a source of real, genuine terror. The media coverage fueled the fear, creating a feedback loop where every new sighting was amplified and every new theory was given credence. The town was no longer in control of its own narrative. It was a character in a national horror story. Part 4. The Theories. The Mothman legend quickly became a puzzle with many possible solutions. The scientific community and skeptics were quick to offer rational explanations. The most popular was the misidentification theory. According to this theory, the Mothman was simply a sandhill crane, a very large bird that can reach a height of up to 5 feet. The sandhill crane has a long neck and a reddish patch around its eyes. and in the low light of a rural road, it could easily be mistaken for a monstrous winged creature. Other skeptics suggested it was a giant owl or perhaps an escaped exotic bird. The high-pitched shriek could be explained as a natural bird call. For those who believe in logic and reason, this was the most satisfying explanation. It took the mystery out of the story and brought it back to Earth. But for those who were actually there, these explanations fell flat. A sandhill crane does not have a wingspan of 12 feet. A giant owl does not chase a car at over 100 miles per hour. And none of these creatures have eyes that glow with a fiery red light. These rational theories simply did not account for all the facts, particularly the sheer number of witnesses and the consistency of their accounts. The people of Point Pleasant were not uneducated or ignorant. They knew what a bird looked like. They knew what an owl looked like, and they were certain that the creature they had seen was neither of these things.
This led to the government conspiracy theories. The abandoned TNT area was a government property, and it was a site of secret research during World War II. It was a place where chemicals and explosives were manufactured and tested. Could the Mothman be a product of a secret military experiment gone wrong? Was it a genetic mutation, a bird or animal that was mutated by toxic waste or a secret bioweapon? This theory gained traction because it offered a plausible, albeit chilling, explanation for the creature's strange appearance and behavior. It also tapped into the growing public distrust of the government during the Cold War. Some believed the creature was a biological weapon, a kind of airborne terror designed to test public response to a non-human threat. Others theorized it was a highly advanced security drone, a kind of prototype for a new era of surveillance, mistaken for a living being. The presence of the men in black only fueled these theories, as it seemed to confirm a coordinated effort to suppress information. But the most compelling theories came from the realm of the paranormal. John Keel, the journalist who had dedicated himself to the case, believed that the Mothman was an ultra-terrestrial, a being from another dimension that had manifested in our world. He theorized that the creature was not a harbinger of doom, but a messenger from an unknown realm, trying to communicate with us. The electrical disturbances, the strange phone calls, the UFO sightings, all of it, Keel believed, was part of a larger phenomenon. He called it the superspectrum, a kind of cosmic noise that was bleeding into our reality. The Mothman in this context was not a monster, but a being that existed just beyond our perception, a ghostly echo of something from another world. Adding to the paranormal theories were those who believed the Mothman was a prophetic entity. Ancient cultures spoke of spirits or creatures that appeared before great disasters. The Mothman, with its mournful shriek and its eerie silence, fit this description perfectly. It was a guardian or a harbinger, a being that felt the approaching tragedy and came to warn humanity, even if it could not be understood. The Mothman's association with the TNT area also led some to believe it was a kind of guardian of the land, angered by the industrial and chemical pollution in the area. The land, they believed, was crying out in warning, and the Mothman was its manifestation. These theories, while impossible to prove, captured the imagination and offered a sense of spiritual significance to an otherwise terrifying series of events. Part 5. The Silver Bridge Collapse. The fear and anxiety in Point Pleasant came to a head on December 15, 1967. It was the night of the annual Christmas parade. The town was bustling with people, and the Silver Bridge, a vital artery that connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, was packed with traffic. It was a cold, quiet night, but beneath the surface there was a palpable sense of dread. The Mothman sightings had been at their peak in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. People were seeing the creature everywhere, often perched on the bridge itself, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. The town's collective unconscious was on high alert, and it was about to be proven right. At 5:04 p.m., in the middle of rush hour, the Silver Bridge suddenly, catastrophically collapsed. A massive suspension chain snapped, and the entire structure came crashing down into the freezing waters of the Ohio River. Cars, trucks, and people plunged into the icy depths. The sound was deafening, a monstrous groan of twisting metal and shattering concrete.
Witnesses on either side of the bridge screamed in horror as they watched the impossible happen before their eyes. The bridge was gone, replaced by a tangled mess of steel and wreckage. It was a disaster of unimaginable scale for a town of its size. The search and rescue operation was a nightmare. The freezing cold, the swift river currents, and the tangled wreckage made it nearly impossible to find survivors. Divers battled the icy water, pulling out bodies and searching for any signs of life. The official death toll was 46 people, a devastating loss for a town of only 5,000 residents. The cause of the collapse was eventually determined to be a tiny fracture in a single steel eye bar, a flaw that was impossible to detect with the technology of the time. But for the people of Point Pleasant, the cause was clear. It was the Mothman. It was a prophecy, a warning from the strange creature that had been haunting their town for a year. The Mothman was a messenger of doom, and it had delivered its message with a terrible, tragic finality. Part 6. The Aftermath and Legacy. After the bridge collapse, the Mothman sightings stopped. The creature, having delivered its terrible prophecy, vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. The town was left to grieve its dead and to rebuild its community, but the legend of the Mothman was no longer just a local curiosity. It was a national sensation, a modern-day myth that had been validated by a real-life tragedy. The people who had seen the creature were no longer just witnesses, they were survivors of a supernatural event. Decades later, Point Pleasant has embraced its legendary resident. The town now holds an annual Mothman festival, attracting thousands of tourists from all over the world. A massive metallic statue of the creature stands in the center of town, its eerie red eyes a beacon for a new generation of believers and skeptics. The legend has been the subject of books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood film, The Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere. The movie, which was based on John Keel's book, helped to introduce the legend to a global audience. The Mothman has become a cultural icon, a symbol of the unknown and the power of a legend to endure. The story of the Mothman is not just a story about a monster. It's a story about fear, about a town's collective anxiety in a time of great change. It's a story about the line between reality and myth, and how that line can blur when a community is faced with a terrifying event. We may never know what the Mothman was. Was it a giant bird, a mutated animal, a paranormal entity, or just a figment of a town's collective imagination? The mystery's power lies in its lack of a clear answer. The Mothman remains a ghost story of the modern world, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. And in the dark of night, in the small, quiet towns of America, the legend of the winged prophet of doom continues to live on, a silent promise that some truths are too strange for the light of day.